And welcome to another episode of 50 Shades and Grey, where today I am joined by a long-term friend. Pleased to introduce you to my friend, Stephen. Steve, hi mate, how are you doing?
I'm good, Elliot. How?
I'm very well, thank you. The reason that I've invited Steve along is we've known each other a long time, and we've led quite parallel lives, actually, myself and Steve, where we've always seemed to have been in relationships at the same time, out of relationships at the same time. So it's fair to say we've had a lot of nights out together over the years.
Made all the same mistakes.
Yet we made the same mistakes, great mistakes, I should hasten to add.
Yeah.
They are very, very good mistakes. Both been close to sort of getting married myself on occasion, Steve, a couple of occasions, which we're going to cover today. But we were speaking recently and I asked Steve to come on because I thought it'd be really good for followers and listeners to hear guys talking about dating in midlife, which, we're doing now. So you're currently single at the moment, Steve, aren't you?
Well, actually, no. Recent update. So I've started seeing someone, actually. So it's probably 4 or 5 dates in so far.
And how have you? So we'll talk about that. How have you found that? Because what have been the big differences between dating in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, and your 50s?
So I mean, for me personally, it's almost a football analogy, I guess. So when you're in your 20s, as a guy, you're looking for, the player pool, the available women potentially. It's a massive pool because you're 20s. So you can go down, you can go up. So I think as you get older, that pool of women or available people, you become less attractive, probably less interesting. And similarly, so I think what happens when you're young is you don't think there's anybody you can't meet, go out with. And as you get older, I think basically you kind of realise over time that opportunity potentially falls away as you get older and stuff. So obviously people get snapped up, married. And I appreciate as you get older, people get divorced as well. So there's always people coming back onto the market. But, we've all got our skeletons in the cupboard, haven't we? So there's always a bit of baggage with every relationship in or out.
In terms of age group, so I think 20s is a given anyway, because I think we're all still very, very young in our 20s, as we are in our 30s. But if you was to choose sort of these 40s off these, when was your most enjoyable period for dating for you?
So I'd probably say mid-40s onwards, possibly to even middle 40s. I mean, even beyond. I mean, I'm still having a good time, still enjoying myself. But I think 30s, you kind of find yourself a little bit more. You kind of have a more of an attitude, I guess. You've kind of been working for a few years, had a few experiences, had a few knocks. You kind of get on with it. So I think 30s, 40s, you've kind of learned a bit. You've normally been out with a few people, so you kind of know what you like and you know what you don't like. So probably that period when you're a bit more mature. And again, in your 30s, as a guy, you'd probably still be looking for someone a bit younger, so you can still go to 20s, 30s. So again, I think as you get older, the people you would probably go for, it shrinks in terms of numbers because there's just less people available, I guess, in your age range.
So a lot of the questions that I get asked, we'll try and cover actually. So one of the questions is why do older guys tend to go for younger women?
So that's a bit of a loaded question because I think most men of a certain age, given the opportunity, would go for a younger girl just because, it's the obvious attraction thing, the lustful girls. Younger girls tend to be a bit more fun. They're more open. There's less attention to detail. They probably haven't had as many bad experiences as a lot of old women have done. So they can be a lot of fun. I mean, we can, we both have dated younger girls. I think, we've both had sort of similar experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, so.
Yeah, I think I've tried to sort of say to women, I don't think, my personal opinion is that I don't think it's just men that do it anyway. I think there are women that also only date younger guys. And when I've actually spoke to those women, the reason that a lot of those guys do it is that they say that they're not attracted to guys their own age, because usually they're women that have looked after themselves. They work hard, go to the gym, and they're attracted by people that do the same. And they're like a lot of guys when they get to their 50s, they don't work out, they don't look after themselves, they tend to care less about themselves, and they just don't find them attractive anymore. So I think they end up going for younger guys because they have more of the qualities that they're looking for. And I think it's a similar story with men, actually. I do find that as well. But I do think it's certain sorts of people rather than it's just men that actually do it. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's women, obviously, if they've got the opportunity, like you say, if a woman's looked after herself, she's in good shape, trains, she's obviously potentially younger guys will also find her attractive. So in my 20s, I dated older girls. And that was because they seem more mature, they seem to know what they were doing, and they've got a little bit more allure, haven't they, sometimes? So, and it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? Women of a certain age, if it's like you say, if they look after themselves, they probably have still got the pick of, a variety of age groups. So I think the problem with all guys, basically, and we're all the same, we get slightly kind of flustered when we're with younger girls, but if someone pays any attention to us, it's quite flattering.
I think it's flattering for anyone when you get paid attention. Even a compliment by someone, I think it's always a nice thing to hear. And like to anyone, I think it can change someone's day just by saying, you look really good today. Not that you can say that anymore in the office, probably.
No, well, it's difficult. I mean, well, you can to a woman of a certain age. As we were talking about earlier, if there's an older guy, you've got to be very respectful and you've got to tiptoe around the office now.
Yeah. So what difficulties have you found yourself, Steve, like dating in your 40s and your 50s? What are the biggest hurdles?
So my biggest bugbear is that normally in your 40s and 50s, the only place to go is online. So dating websites, and like all things, we're all filled with lots of expectation. We all believe we still look great. We don't see ourselves being any older. So we all believe we're still our 20, 30 something selves. And we'll do what everyone else does. We'll put our best photos online. We'll pick a pouty face. We'll make sure the lighting is ideal to sculpt the body. And then that's our profile. And then we'll, talk ourselves up, make ourselves sound as fascinating as possible. We'll come up with every single funny story we've ever come out with, and we'll stick that on there as well. So, we come across as some kind of jet set comedian. So, and when we come to meet people, the reality is never quite as simple as that, is it? And it's never quite as good. So, from my experience, I've probably done 2 or 3 bouts of web dating. First, probably latter 30s in the first lot, and that was actually quite a good experience. Met some people out of that. But latterly, I've done it in my late 40s and 50s, and it's been horrendous. To the point where, as I said, I think the last time I web dated was a few years ago. The last 3 web dates I ever had lasted a total of an hour, so probably 20 minutes each. Because I kind of reached a point where, if I met somebody and they didn't kind of meet my expectations, or, I felt that the pictures or the profile had slightly over exaggerated how nice they were going to be, I just wasn't willing to hang about for 3 hours, have dinner, have drinks, knowing I'd never see them again.
Did you find that it made you quite cynical of the whole dating process, the actual website itself in the end?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do. But I think they're there for a reason. I think everybody's got the best intentions. They all want to meet somebody. Everyone's grappling for, a partnership, a coupledom. We look around, everyone's always in a couple. Nothing great about being single at Christmas or Valentine's. But I think at the same time, people have to be realistic sometimes. I think everyone's got overinflated estimations of themselves. Everyone thinks they can date, whoever they think they can date. But the reality is you've got to you've got to stay in your league, quite frankly.
I think we all think we're in a much higher league than we were probably actually in.
Yeah. We all think we're in Champions League. We're actually in like the Vauxhall Conference, aren't we, really? So that's the issue. I think it's basically people have got to be realistic. And I think as well, we all want to believe we can box up. So, and when that happens, that's great because it's like hanging on to a tiger, isn't it? Hanging on to a tiger's tail, just trying to follow good-looking girls around, willing to do anything you possibly can to hang on to them. So, but it's always dangerous.
So I remember a conversation with you actually. And again, at the same time, we were both using the apps, and I think I was getting quite sort of despondent with them. And you said something that I always remembered. Actually, you said you'd got to the stage where you was almost approaching it like not like a business meeting, but almost like I'm going to do this over lunchtime. It's going to be sort of 15, 20 minutes, and I might do a couple like in succession, but you was approaching it very methodically, which when you first,
that's the only thing you can do, I think, because it is.
Well, I when you first told me, I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about that. But the more that I did them, because I think it was when I first started doing them, I thought, do you know what? It's probably the best way to do it because the chances of meeting, I mean, you meet people and you meet some lovely people. But the chances of sort of connecting with people, because it's so different on the apps, like you say, we all use our best pictures. You're meeting literally different people to what you think you're meeting in your head, don't you?
Yeah, and the difference is basically that you can speak to them. I think I found early on the problem is you spend a lot of time speaking to people online, phone calls. I did a bout of this coming out of in COVID, where we got into doing walks over parks and things like that because that was the only way you could actually meet people. And that's because COVID, everyone was indoors for 2 years and there was no interaction. So I thought coming out of COVID would be quite a good thing to do. But the problem is you can meet a lot of nice people, and I got on with a lot of people. But if there's no initial attraction when you meet them, you do feel like you've wasted 3 weeks of your life having a conversation with a complete stranger that you're never going to speak to again.
I agree. I mean, I did a post on the Instagram actually about my advice for me that I would do now for people that are doing apps is literally have 2 or 3 text messages backwards and forwards, then speak on the phone and then FaceTime them, like all in the space of like a couple of weeks, and then meet for a coffee. Because I found that if it didn't happen in 2 weeks, it wasn't going to happen anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the problem basically, we're all. I mean, men probably more than women. It's about physical attraction. Effectively, I've done phone calls, FaceTime, did a lot of Zoom calls with people. I didn't really know how I felt about them until I was stood 2 feet away.
Yeah.
And we were actually talking. Yeah, I could, like it's the sort of 5-second attractive thing, isn't it? So you can meet someone. They can be a great person, tick every box, live around the corner, have a great job, be a great person, funny. You can meet them and just think you can friend zone them in 5 seconds. And the same for you. So basically they feel the same, it's not just me. It's you've got, I'm only 50% of the whole transaction. The other person's got to think the same thing.
So I know, and we touched on it earlier on, that you actually got engaged once before, didn't you?
Twice, mate.
You've been engaged twice?
I've been engaged twice, yeah. So firstly with the Australian girl.
Yeah.
Who ended up going back to Australia because she missed the country more than me. And then latterly with the young girl who was sort of 20 years younger, which was, midlife crisis on steroids, basically. So that was me grasping at my youth for as long as possible.
Did you think you realised, the reason I'm asking is because that's probably, you know what it's like, we always think we're the only ones going through a situation, but there's probably loads of people who go through that situation, have been through that situation or are in that situation. Do you think when you was in that, did you think you knew that at the time?
I basically had to be realistic about it. So I already had a child, so she was a lot younger than me. So we were talking about a family. So you're then talking about a second family, because you've got to be honest about it. That was her expectation. We were together 5 years. I probably popped the question to prolong the relationship. Did I think it was going to work out? I was always 50-50 probably in the whole thing, just because, you got all of the good stuff. and then you've got quite a lot of the bad stuff, in terms of the age gap, which is attractive when you first meet someone. But if you've got to live with them on a day, we were living together. If you're living together on a day to day, that becomes quite tiresome quite quickly. But she had her ups and we had our ups and downs, good and bad. I look back now, and despite some of the stuff that happens, I look at that with rosy glasses and think, what a great time I had. I was with that girl for 5 years. Yeah, with that girl for 5 years. We had a great time, great holiday. Lots of stuff went on. It kind of, like you say, it kind of pumped my ego for 5 years to be dating someone 20 years younger.
So now, I know you just said, you've recently met someone, but now if you were giving advice to sort of women that were looking to meet people, again, a lot of the feedback that I have is that they don't want to do exactly like you've said already. They don't want to do dating apps. But they do want to meet people, but they find it hard meeting people organically because of, one, who can you go out with now sometimes? Because if you need other single people to go out with.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge as well. If you're going out with your friends and they're all in couples, then it becomes sometimes, like I've said to you, sometimes it's great because sometimes you can get to places, and if you're with someone that you don't want to be with, all you're thinking to yourself is, I just wish I was here on my own. This would be great. Yeah. I would just rather be on my own. But at the same time, when you are on your own, you're thinking, this would be great to be doing this with someone that I wanted here. And then you feel detached from the situation because everyone else is with their partners, and then you're then doing that thing where you're looking at your phone, and then you think, probably I'll just go.
I would say to everyone, so, outside of the web dating thing, I don't think I'll ever do again, just because it's such hard work, so time consuming, just wears you down. So I'm a big believer. I think guys our age are a lot more social than women are our age. So I think guys maintain relationships, throughout, being married or whatever. So I still socialise a hell of a lot. So I think, if you've got the opportunity, I go out with other couples when I'm single. Just, there's an opportunity to go out, and every time you're out, there's an opportunity to meet someone in any circumstance. So I firmly believe you're better off going out, being social, just trying to talk to people when you're out. You haven't got to be, full on. But if you're in an environment, bar, restaurant, it hasn't got to be a nightclub, could be anything. Basically, there's always an opportunity to meet someone. And the thing is, at the moment you meet that person, if you like. So you haven't got to spend 3, 4, 5 weeks online, texting them, doing phone calls. The moment you meet them, there might be some attraction there. So, and that works both ways.
Yeah, and I would also say, before you even speak to them, you've already done 1,000 things already without realising it, like looking at how they carry themselves, how they act, and then you speak to them. So you're already halfway there, and you don't get any of that on the dating apps.
No, I mean, the girl I've met, I was at a sports lunch in the city. So she was on a table, basically. I'd seen her walking around the room, saw how she moved, saw how she spoke to people. So that literally was alluring to start with. So that was what encouraged me to then go over and start talking to her. So I'd already kind of pre-qualified her.
Well, you do.
But what was going on?
I think it's very true. I think I've said this before, I think there's 1,000 things that you do without actually realising that you do naturally. So like all your like what they call sort of red flags, which is a word that I hate. But, for me, if I see someone smoking or vaping, immediately I'll dismiss them because I know I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very fussy, but that's just one of the things I don't like. And you'll do all these things, but they're all things that you never find out about people when you're web dating, because people don't always tell you. Then you'll go out with them and you'll find out that they do smoke or they do vape or they don't drink or they do drink. And, these are all things that you're then discovering that otherwise you don't have to meet them to just discover these things in a bar or a restaurant a lot of the time.
That's right, yeah. So, my biggest bugbear is going out with someone that, drinks excessively, can't hold their drink. So, guys struggle with it, I guess. women to a degree. I don't mind. Everyone can go out and have a good time. I just don't like people getting too silly when they've had a drink. So that's one of my things. So if you're actually out, you can see how people behave. You know, I'd tell everyone, get out there as much as possible. I know sometimes it's not practical. Sometimes you've got, you know, family situations, kids, whatever. So you are tied to the house. But any opportunity, don't let couples going out put you off. If you've got couples, you know, friends and couples, go out with them as a single person. You know, it doesn't matter. If they're your friends, they're your friends.
Well, listen, mate, thank you so much for joining me and chatting away. It's flown past, and I know we have lots of other stories. So maybe we'll do another one of these where we can go through some of our exploits of when we were younger.
Yeah, some of the mishaps.
Some of the mishaps, but I think we'd both have to be in different jobs before we do that, actually, because otherwise...
I don't think we retired because I'll probably get sacked in the first 30 seconds.
Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for joining 50 Shades of Grey. Steve, thank you again. Make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you soon.